This lecture is about the Renaissance period, which lasted between 1485 and 49, sorry. And Renaissance is an Italian word that means rebirth. Then Renaissance began in Italy, especially in art and architecture, in the 15th century. And during this time, there were new ways of seeing and thinking, and also new worlds were discovered. For example, and in the 16th century, England became the most powerful nation in Europe. Talking about new worlds, Columbus discovered America in 1492. Copernicus and Galileo made important discoveries about the stars and planets, and this shows that the Renaissance was a worldwide movement. In England during this time, there was an important change in religion and politics when Henry VIII made himself the head of the Church of England, and this meant that the church and state was brought closer together. All contacts with the Pope in Rome were cut, and Protestantism became important and the new religion rather than Catholicism. And the king or the queen became the human being on earth who was closest to God. And there was the basis of the Renaissance was the humanist concern regarding the people. And Henry VIII's daughter became the symbol of the Golden Age, Queen Elizabeth. And the Golden Age was a period of stability from 1558 to 1603. And England's enemies were defeated, and the English controlled the seas of the world, exploring and bringing valuable goods from the New World. Queen Elizabeth, she was considered to be a stone queen. And to disregard this, she said that I may not be a lion, but I am a lion's cub, and I have a lion's heart. And there were many changes in the world during this time. The Renaissance was the beginning of the modern world in many areas, such as geography, politics, science, religions, society, and art. And it was also during this time that English became the modern language that we recognize today, and many new forms of writing developed, but the most important form of expression during this time was theater. And many English women enter authorship and publication, and they write about issues that either diminish or repress women. There was also a huge fear of chaos that existed outside the planet, and people wanted to learn more about this. Poetry during this period was read mainly by the upper classes, and the English poetry was heavily influenced by Italian poets. And the sonnet, which came from Italy in the original, became a very important form of writing. And it was developed, the English sonnet was developed and has a special rhyme scheme, and it's also called the Elizabethan scheme. And the Elizabethan scheme is a poem that consists of 14 lines, all consisting of 10 syllables. And the words rhyme every other line, except in the final lines where the rhyme words are repeated together, which you will see when you read one of Shakespeare's sonnets later on. William Shakespeare is, of course, one of the most famous authors from this time, and he was born and brought up in Stratford-upon-Avon in England. And he went to London when he was 22 to become an actor and a playwright. And Shakespeare began his career by writing comedies and history plays. Little is known about Shakespeare's life other than his writings, but what is known is that he wrote 37 plays. All of his plays were written to be performed, not published. And he also created a theater company later known as the King's Men. And of course, as already mentioned, Shakespeare also wrote poetry in the form of sonnets. Many of Shakespeare's plays are history plays, and they usually have a title of an English king, such as Henry V, Henry VI, and Henry VIII. And what distinguishes these plays is that they show that the king is also a human being with real worries and concerns, and not only a cold ruler. Many of the history plays also became tragedies, like Hamlet. As Shakespeare, he creates sympathy for his hero, and he's making understandable, complex, and recognizable characters, which is probably what made him so famous. Shakespeare liked to return to different historical periods in different times, and the same historical subjects often return in his different periods, such as the early period, middle period, and his late plays. And very often the political questions examined in the history plays have clear links with the political situation in England at the time that Shakespeare was writing. Many of Shakespeare's great tragedies were written between 1598 and 1607, which is sometimes called his Black Period. And of course, Romeo and Juliet is the most famous tragedy of love in all literature, and this was one of the earliest tragedies written, and it's less philosophical and complex than his later tragedies. Other tragedies are, for example, Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. And what all tragedies have in common is that mankind is constantly trying to go beyond its limits in order to achieve perfection and harmony in the world. But mankind itself is not perfect and must therefore fail in all these attempts. And many of the tragedies end in pessimism, where life has lost its meaning, but usually some hope for the future can be found. The question of future harmony is important also in Shakespeare's comedies. And in the comedies, the world is threatened and shaken, but the ending is always happy. And subjects in the comedies are as serious as some of the subjects in the tragedies. For example, you can find identity in the Comedy of Errors, Twelfth Night, and As You Like It. You find the role of women in The Taming of the Shrew, love and jealousy in Much Ado About Nothing, love and power in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and the power of money and the attempt to deceive in The Merchant of Venice. Many of Shakespeare's plays have, of course, always also been made into feature films. The plays that are called his final plays in the end of his life are often involve an escape to the countryside. And even if the themes are the same in these final plays, the tone that they are written in is very different, is usually written darker. And one of the most famous final plays is The Tempest. The Globe is the name of the theater that Shakespeare had built in the 1590s. And this was an open-air theater without roof, so that meant that performances could be only given by day, since there were no lights, so there were no night performances. And the stage was simply a large platform, and ordinary people in the audience stood around three sides of the platform, and there were roofed galleries with seats for rich people. There was no curtain to divide the stage from the audience, and little or no scenery at all. And the playwright described the scenes in the words of the characters. And since the audience was very near the actors, they became involved with the characters and their problems. Returning to the sonnets now, Shakespeare's sonnets, 154 of them he wrote, they covered a wide range of subjects such as love and loss, loneliness and change, and the passing of time. And the sonnets often contain a mysterious dark lady and a fair man, seen as the male and female ideas of love.